The Zika virus is still in the news. The Zika virus is causing states and countries in the Western Hemisphere to go on red alert. The Olympics in Brazil may even be threatened. In fact, the state of Hawaii is saying it will take a guerrilla war effort to root out the disease. But is the Zika virus the actual cause of this current health crisis? As Tech Times reported on February 14th, larvicide manufactured by Monsanto partner, not Zika virus, true cause of Brazil's microcephaly outbreak. Malformations detected in thousands of children from pregnant women living in areas where the Brazilian state added piproxyfen to the drinking water is not a coincidence, the PCST wrote. For instance, the Brazilian Health Ministry had injected piproxyfen into reservoirs in the state of Pernambuco. In the area, the proliferation of the mosquito carrying the Zika virus was very high. Pernambuco is also the first state in Brazil that noticed the problem. The state contains 35% of the total microcephaly cases in the country. A group of Argentine doctors pointed out that during past Zika epidemics, there may not have been any cases of microcephaly linked to the virus. In fact, about 75% of the population in countries where Zika broke out had been infected by the mosquito-borne virus. Zika virus has been all over the news as being cause of the birth defect known as microcephaly, a defect causing babies to be born with unusually small heads. While there is no scientific evidence that proves a link between the mosquito and the outbreak of microcephaly, health agencies such as the CDC and World Health Organization strongly allude to the fact that there is a link. The CDC even has a page dedicated to the Zika virus where they state, additional studies are needed to determine the degree to which Zika might be linked to microcephaly. And the World Health Organization states, recently in Brazil, local health authorities have observed an increase in Guillain-Barré syndrome, which coincided with Zika virus infections in the general public, as well as an increase in babies born with microcephaly in northeast Brazil. Agencies investigating the Zika outbreaks are finding an increasing body of evidence about the link between the Zika virus and microcephaly. However, more investigation is needed to better understand the relationship between microcephaly in babies and the Zika virus. Other potential causes are also being investigated. Weeks ago, when Zika first hit the mainstream media, we had investigative journalist John Rappaport on, and he explained his skepticism over the mosquito being the vector of the Zika virus, and that being the cause of birth defects in babies. He even pointed out to pesticide use as being a probable culprit.
In my recent article at No More Fake News, I run down the useless and deceptive laboratory tests that try to define how, for example, the Zika virus is causing babies to be born with smaller heads and damaged brains, and the science absolutely does not hold up. You are talking about gigantic amounts of pesticide use down there. They use more pesticides in Brazil than any country in the world. Any country in the world. And many of these pesticides are banned in 22 other countries. So you're talking about highly toxic substances in the very area where they're reporting all of these, deformed births.
Of course, it was InfoWars that pointed out that the Rockefeller Corporation owns the Zika virus, so it is yet to be determined what role the Rockefellers are playing in this crisis. But as of now, Zika hysteria has gripped the world, and it will just be more of our freedoms that are taken away to combat this so-called disease when it may not even be the culprit of this birth defect epidemic currently hitting Brazil. Rob Dew reporting for Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News.
Joe Biggs here with Infowars.com. Now, this past week in Savannah, Georgia, the annual conference of the American Mosquito Control Association met to discuss the upcoming problems we may face with the Zika virus. Now, nearly a year after the first case was discovered in Brazil, there have been tests being done. There have been, doctors looking into us, and they do believe that birth defects are caused by this and other neurological problems. Now, what we do know is that this Zika virus is no longer something that is just abroad. It is now starting to bear down on our American shores and is starting to become our problem. Now, it is already in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Now, there have already been over 50 cases of Americans who have been infected abroad. Now, what these experts believe at this conference is that by this summer, there will be a more domestic version of the Zika virus, meaning the mosquitoes here will be carrying the virus, and that will spread throughout the country as well. One of the experts there at the conference, Dennis Moore, the director of mosquito control in Pasco County, Florida, said it will be like preparing for a hurricane. We know that it's coming from across the Gulf, but where it hits and how bad it will be is unknown. Now, the Aedes aegypti is the mosquito that carries this Zika virus. They say that this mosquito is tenacious and pretty much almost impervious to the outdoor spraying techniques that we are used to here in America. The techniques for tracking it are outdated and underfunded. Now, experts interviewed here this week at the conference said that the Zika virus will need or require a major shift in our country's approach to mosquito control, meaning that they want to go door to door. This says it right here in the New York Times article. It says a more door-to-door action, a painstaking and expensive practice that many say is a tall order or an era of shrinking budgets and wariness of government intrusion. And this is a quote, "This guerrilla warfare house-to-house method is still very new, and I'm not convinced that many places are prepared for it," said Michael Doyle, the head of the mosquito control of the Florida Keys. So they want to use, in quotation marks here, they said this, experts, the CDC's there, CDC Director Thomas Fraden, say that this is a good technique, door to door. Will this be the way they usher in mandatory vaccinations? And if you refuse, you and your family, what will happen? We already saw what happened with Chris Christie, the governor of New Jersey, with the Ebola crisis that happened a year ago. He was all about throwing people in quarantines. Will this happen on a large, massive scale? Will people give in and take this vaccination that we don't know the outcome, the effects that could happen, the side effects? Or will there be a huge uprising and people saying, no, you're not going to forcibly give me some kind of vaccination that I don't know the side effects on? And will there be a large amount of people that are forced to be held in camps and quarantined for times unknown? This is a problem that we will be facing in the year 2016. Hopefully, we can do something about this. Stay tuned for more reports at Infowars.com. I'm Joe Biggs.